Welcome to Health University, the online classroom and podcast dedicated to empowering women and couples on their fertility, pregnancy, perimenopause, and emotional relationships journeys. I'm Dr. Susan Fox, a women's health expert with over 20 years of experience in helping women and couples navigate fertility challenges and heal their whole health and reproductive health. With compassion, clarity, and practical tips, our podcast episodes provide a wealth of information tailored to your unique needs. We're passionate about helping you understand your own body and its connection to mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. I'd be honored if you would help me by taking a moment to rate and review our podcast on iTunes. Your positive feedback helps us reach more listeners who can benefit from our empowering and educational approach to fertility and holistic wellness. Hello, and welcome to Health University podcast, where we are intending to give you the tools and support you need to enhance your understanding and knowledge of the University of You. And I have with me today Dr. Irene Cop, who is the founder of the Success to Shift Institute. And she is a medical doctor and a doctor of chiropractic, and she is on faculty for one of our programs called the Your Fertile Health Program, and I'm so grateful for her support in that. She's going to describe for us today what is SHIFT and how you can implement it in your everyday life. It's not just a fertility endeavor, it's for every aspect of your life. So welcome, Dr. Irene.
Thank you so much for having me here, Dr. Susan. It is a total pleasure.
Thank you. Tell us about SHIFT.
So the Success Shift Institute was born out of my own catastrophic burnout and near fatal car accident that nearly killed my young sons and myself. And when I say catastrophic burnout, it is that it's beyond burnout, really. And the definition of burnout, according to its originator, Dr. Freudenberger, as well as the World Health Organization, is that it's purely workplace related and only mental and emotional. Whereas we know now, especially after the last few years, that it goes way beyond workplace into our personal lives, right? In other words, it's really whenever you are overwhelmed by the deluge of life's curveballs, right, for instance. And it's like the mental and emotional is like the canary in the coal mine. It's the harbinger of more deadly things to come. And so catastrophic burnout, or flame out syndrome, as I call it, is really where you have that severe health breakdown caused by where you are literally running on empty. You've gone through, survival mode, and whether it's a sudden overwhelming just life comes crashing down, or whether it's just been too much for too long, right? You are running on empty and you got nothing left, right? And that is when your body starts breaking down. And how it breaks down is really what your weak link happens to be. For some people, it might be autoimmune conditions, or since we're on this podcast, it may be infertility issues. In my case, I developed a hidden physical condition that caused me to lose consciousness. Unfortunately, while I was driving with my two young sons in the car, and we literally almost died. It could have happened while I was standing in my kitchen. Right. And, I would have just thought, oh, I fainted.
Right.
And it would have been entirely different. However, as it was, I was lying in a hospital bed with 10 broken bones. My youngest son, who was 4 years old at the time, with a catastrophic brain injury, undergoing emergency life-saving surgery in a different hospital. Couldn't see him because this was the first SARS, so we were on quarantine. And, they didn't know if he was going to live for the first month or so. And then even after that, they said he was never going to walk again, never going to talk again, never pass high school, because he was literally missing about 20% of his brain due to this catastrophic brain injury. And I'm getting all this news while I'm lying literally flat on my back with 10 broken bones, not able to see my sons, going crazy for fear and literally blubbering, going, why me? Why me? And part of that was the guilt, the shame, the remorse of almost killing my young sons. Forget my 10 broken bones. It was also, why me?
Yeah.
I'm a doctor. I eat right. I exercise right. I'm a meditation instructor. I do yoga. I do everything, quote, right. So how did this happen to me? So
that is the $10,000 question or more. And that you can now answer. How did this happen? What might have been signs that you could have recognized before that you now can see very clearly and can teach others?
Absolutely. Because here's the thing, I have a special passion for helping, my peeps that I call purpose-driven high achievers, mission-driven, right? In other words, we doctors, we healthcare professionals, especially, but you could also say moms, dads, right? Anybody who is, feels driven to help others, including their own family, right? What do? We just naturally give until we're bled dry. We sacrifice for the greater good. We believe in our mission so strongly that we keep pushing forward. And at the same time, I recognize that there are hidden energy vampires that were literally sucking the life out of me when I didn't realize it. And part of that was my programming. Right? The programming that had been downloaded into me saying, thou shalt be perfect or don't bother showing up. Right? That I had to prove myself to be worthy. Does this sound familiar to anyone? Right? Sure. In other words, there's so much programming. Women were expected to give to others and soothe the waters and make sure everyone else's lives are just perfect, right? Before we're allowed to be happy and look after ourselves.
Meanwhile,
all of this programming,
running CEO level executive businesses or professional businesses. Yes.
Absolutely.
Forgetting we live in a human body.
Exactly. And then I recognized the biggest energy vampire of all, and that was past trauma. And yes, I had an abusive childhood, a traumatic childhood, because I had a father with PTSD from atrocities he experienced and witnessed in the army. And he did what any good soldier did at the time, especially since it wasn't recognized at the time, was that he self-medicated, sucked it up, took it like a man, and kept putting one foot in front of the other, and, self-medicate with alcohol to drown the demons and, calm the nightmares, and unfortunately took it out on his family. So I recognize that. And now we also recognize that there's intergenerational trauma, where part of that programming that is downloaded into us as children also includes the trauma responses from all of our parents, our grandparents, whoever had a significant role in raising us,
right? Including
adoptive parents,
and including our cultural lineage that we're be it cultural or spiritual. There is that relationship as well that can be very influential for better or for worse.
Absolutely, and so cultural lineage, as in programming, and again, they now realize what I call epigenetic trauma, which is where they've realized that trauma changes the expression of your genetics, right? Literally. And so it turns on inflammatory genes, cancer-causing genes, disease-causing genes. It turns off beneficial genes, like anti-inflammatory genes. And right, so it literally, not only can fear and other emotional responses be transmitted down through the generation. So if you ever have an irrational fear and wonder where it came from, could be this.
Right.
And they also know that your risk for disease is increased. Your risk for premature mortality is increased. So in my case, I'm the youngest of 6 kids. So I was the only one born after my father's traumatic experiences. So not only was there my personal trauma from growing up in that household, there was the intergenerational trauma of my father's trauma responses, and my mother had her own. That's a whole nother story, but this is just to give an idea. But on top of that, I then inherited the trauma responses. So this is why I so often have clients who say, I've never had trauma. So whether they truly believe that they live in a utopia and have never had any kind of trauma, which trauma simply means any time that your system, so it could be physical as well, you have felt overwhelmed, out of control, powerless, fearful, victimized by life, right? That's why we keep going back to childhood, because when else are you in that place where you are the smallest creature around and at the mercy of all the big people, right? And you don't understand what's going on. So everything seems afraid. But on top of that, you may not even recognize that you have trauma. I did not recognize the personal trauma for years until I started helping other clients. Yeah, because it's like, it was just the way it was. It was just the way it was. And, because people didn't talk about it, they didn't use the term trauma, certainly not that. It was just, that was just dad. Right. And, you just learn to calibrate your responses and be hyper vigilant, because you never knew whether it was going to be daddy walking through the door or whether it was going to be the bear walking through the door. Right. So, and I give these examples so that your listeners can get a sense of maybe, just maybe, this hidden energy vampire is at play in their life and maybe causing the physical symptoms that they may not be able to pinpoint of what it is, right? Because that trauma, the hidden energy vampires drain, what we call your adrenal energy, right? It's that survival throws you into survival mode over and over and over again without you even realizing it, possibly. And on top of that, you are then, what's the word I'm looking for? Your weak link. Is what shows up. So I know you and I have had conversations in the past.
Scar of that weak link, because we will do, that's the adaptive pattern of like, okay, I've got this handled, when we've really never gone in and addressed the wound. We've got a scar over the wound, but we haven't addressed the wound. And absolutely. I would even venture to say, you mentioned physical and physiological, but psychological, right? We're in a time now where we know mental health is so delicate, and so many people, I think, have either become traumatized or their historical trauma has been triggered by the events of the past few years, and some of just our existential issues that are out there across the globe. So what I'm getting from you is that if we're living, breathing human beings, there's probably some level of trauma that we can peek into and address. And there is no better time than now, not wait until evidence of the flame out or burnout or car crash or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because just as I had developed that hidden condition and didn't know about it, and you're absolutely right, mental and emotional health must be addressed. The reason I tend to highlight the physical is because there's still a shame and stigma around emotional and mental health challenges. So I'm on a mission to normalize the conversation and remove that shame and stigma by talking about what really matters. And that is that no matter how it's showing up for you, there is hope and there is help, right? And so that is the biggest way. And yes, that weak link is how it shows up for you. I know, preaching to the choir here, right? You know as well as I do. I have this pet peeve that talking about diseases and diagnoses, doesn't matter if I have, dual doctor degrees, I fundamentally disagree with them, because really at the root of all of them is inflammation for chronic, I'm talking chronic conditions, whether they're mental, emotional, or physical. And what is at the basis of that, what's causing the inflammation, right? That's what we need to get down to. So everything else is just, how is it showing up in your body? The condition I developed was hypoglycemia, opposite of hyper, which causes diabetes, right? Mine was caused by adrenal exhaustion, right? It's just how it showed up in my life. For somebody else, that same can show up with hormonal imbalances leading to infertility.
Or anxiety leading to insomnia, or just the wear and tear leading to a chronic low back pain or headache or something like that in the physical realm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So do you, for our listeners, I know you've got a deep dive set of options, and I want to invite and encourage you to share with us what those might be. But as a brief takeaway today, what are some of the simple tools that we might be able to use, if there are any, to either, kind of probe, identify, and address and heal a trauma?
That's a wonderful question, Dr. Susan. First and foremost, I always say awakening awareness is 80% of the battle and the solution. In other words, it's kind of like if you really want to have a clean house, right, and you have an area rug, just doing a surface clean isn't really getting all the dirt. You have to lift the carpet to look underneath and go, oh my goodness, look at all that dirt. But you don't spend hours going, oh my gosh, look at all the dirt here. Oh, how could I live like this? No, you just clean the dirt.
Exactly.
Right? In other words, that's the first step of the awakening awareness. Before that, I'm going to back up and say that's actually the second step.
Okay.
The first step is that you must shift out of survival mode into healing mode, or as I call success mode, 360-degree success. In other words, what does that 10 out of 10 look like in your health and energy, in your relationships, in your personal life, and yes, in your career and wealth? Because if it's impacting you in one area, guaranteed it's impacting you in others. But the reason why I say you must shift out, it's physiologically impossible for you to be in survival mode, which is your sympathetic nervous system activation, versus your parasympathetic, which is your healing mode, your rest and digest mode, your creativity mode. And when you are in sympathetic and when you are in that survival mode, your prefrontal cortex, your thinking brain, what I love to call your executive rock star team, is wiped offline, right? And it's meant to be that way, and you want it to be that way, because if you really are facing a life or death threat, that is not the time to be standing going, let me think about this. Right. Should I run right now, or should I, turn and fight, or should I faint and play dead and hope they don't notice me? Right. No, because you would be somebody's next, a bear's next meal or something, right? In other words, we all have our hardwired stress and survival responses that fit us physiologically. We're just like animals. A gazelle is hardwired to run. A honey badger turns and fights. A rabbit shivers in fear and paralyzes. A possum falls over and plays dead, faints, right? We are the same way. And because that thinking brain is wiped offline, this is why people have so many challenges making change in their life or healing, because you're throwing yourself into, you're in survival mode, right? So you're not thinking straight. You can't think logically. You can't think creatively. You can't make good decisions. You can't act on those good decisions. And your emotions are running the show. So you're just a mess, right? So very first is to shift out of survival mode, and you can do it in like 30 seconds or less. And I'm happy to, if we have time, to give you a demonstration of a couple of ways.
Absolutely. I think that these takeaways would be huge. But before we go there, I have a question on how do you and when does one make the shift? Because, as you say, it's impossible to get there when you're in fight or flight. So do you recommend setting yourself up with particular times of the day, perhaps bookending, beginning the day and ending of the day, so you've got that muscle flexed, if you will, or ready to go should you need it?
Great question and great suggestion. You're absolutely right. When you are thrown into that hardwired stress and survival response, that happens in milliseconds. There is no conscious thought of, oh, here we go. In fact, you're there before you even realize it. So the short answer in that time is as soon as you can. Right? As soon as that first inkling of awareness, do one of these modes. What you are suggesting is what we teach our clients to, which is build up that muscle memory as much as possible, because guess what? The brown stuff is going to hit the fan, as it always does. And you may not have much control in that moment, right? And the more muscle memory you have, the more these tools and techniques will become second nature to you, will become so hardwired in themselves that you can automatically go to them. So I always recommend creating rituals and routines around them. And one of those, as you said, bookending before the instant you wake up in the morning, there, have that routine set so that, you're set for the day, or as long as you can go during the day. At night, to help you calm the system down. And then perhaps throughout the day, tie it in with a habit that you already have. So that, because a habit just simply means that it's hardwired in, your unconscious mind already runs that pattern without you having to think about it. So you piggyback it.
Right. Gotcha.
So that it's part of it. I have a little card like one of those recipe cards, that I have stuck into my mirror in the bathroom. Because how often do we go use the bathroom?
Right. I was actually thinking brushing your teeth could be a time. I know that I, for instance, set so many alarms on my phone with a lovely, gentle chime sound, not one that's alarming. And so why don't I do that as well for these moments of reset and reconnection? They're there for my, Zoom calls or my appointments. So I think that could be just also a nice way of redesigning my response to the appointments that I otherwise have set. They're not going to be this alarm like, oh gosh, I got to go do that. It'll be like, oh, there's that chime. And it's either I'm going to take a breath, or I'm going to go to the appointment, or I'm going to take a breath and then go to the appointment.
Right. And great point. So whether you're doing it as a Pomodoro style, so a productivity and focus exercise, where we know neurophysiologically our attention span really is like nowhere near what we think it is, typically 20, 25 minutes. So Pomodoro style is where you literally set that timer for 25 minutes. Then you take a 5-minute break, and then you start the next chunk of your Pomodoro style. So this is if you're not necessarily going into meetings. This is where you're doing paperwork or you're doing creative work, right? That 5 minutes can be, yes, a bio break. It can also be like stretching. It can be one of these tools, right? Or multiple of these, right? In other words, and so that when you start again in the next half hour, the next 25 minutes, you're fresh, you're creative, you're ready to go. One of the things that I do, and it has become hardwired into me, as your example of, before I start any meeting, I have trained myself to ask a series of questions of, well, more of a mantra. It's like, what is my outcome, purpose, and action for this meeting? And so even if it's that I am showing up 100%, giving my best, knowing that this is in the highest good of all, however you choose to say it. In other words, it's you go from like, oh my goodness, I got to do this, to I am choosing to show up as my best for this other person or for these other people. And you can do the same thing going into even a meeting without others, right? In other words, it's that quick reset, and it only takes 30 seconds, even if you're running late. For a meeting, how much more productive and how much easier is the communication going to flow if you take 30 seconds to shift out of survival mode, which is anxious mode, overwhelmed mode of, I got to do this, to, all right, I'm ready.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah.
So absolutely. Those are, and as you do more of those, whether it's bookending it, whether it's every hour on the hour, whether it's that little trigger reminder in your mirror as you go to the, bathroom and you're washing your hands anyway, right? Make a point of creating that ritual, the routine around it, tying it to something that you are already doing so that it is integrated far more quickly. And then you can go, okay, all right.
I like that, because the more you also, excuse me for interrupting, it becomes not this other thing you do, but it just becomes more a part of you.
Absolutely.
Would you mind sharing with us a technique or a tool?
I would love to. I would love to. And like I said, it can be really, really fast. So first and foremost, the vagus nerve is your major parasympathetic nerve in your body. So the more you stimulate your vagus nerve, the that is your rest and digest, or your heal nerve, your creativity nerve, you could say.
Even
right?
your reproduce nerve, by the way.
Yes, your reproduce nerve, right? So you want to be in that as much as possible. So one of the biggest ways is your voice box. The vagus nerve innervates what's called your larynx, your voice box. So first things first, when you take a breath in, that actually stimulates your sympathetic nervous system. So you want that to be shorter. Still breathing deeply, but you want it to be shorter. Holding your breath or pausing your breath stimulates your parasympathetic. Long, slow out breath, as long as you can go, stimulates your parasympathetic. Here's a secret. By humming it out or singing it out, whether it's a chant or a you are you're giving that extra stimulation. So we can breathe in, like into our belly, say to the count of 3 or 4, breathe in. Hold to the count of 3 or 4. And then hum it out as long as you can.
Beautiful.
However long you can. In the beginning, it might be because you're not used to breathing deeply and using those muscles, and that's okay. So in other words, breathe in, say to the count of 3, hold to the count of 3, and exhale or hum as long as you can. How else can this look? How about a fun way? Create a fun, positive, inspiring playlist.
Oh, okay.
Right? And that you play and listen to when you're in the car or you're cooking in the kitchen, or like have a dance party in the kitchen, get your body moving, singing to your favorite tunes. Make sure they're positive.
Yes.
Make sure they're positive, because your unconscious mind can't tell the difference between reality and fantasy. So if you're singing, as much as you might love them, those country songs of, you lost your dog, you lost your wife, you lost your house, you lost everything. Guess what your unconscious mind is hearing?
Yeah.
Right? I love the Eagles as a band. You know how many positive songs they have? Exactly. It's really hard. It's really hard. So for the purposes of this, find your favorite positive, inspiring songs and make a playlist of them, whether it's on Spotify or on your Apple Music, whatever it is, and sing as much as possible, because that's doing the same thing, but doing it in a positive way.
Yeah. Make yourself your own favorite soundtrack. It's such a gift to yourself. I love that. I was even thinking when you talked about the making the sound, the humming or whatever, we innately do that with a sigh, right? When things just get too tight, we want to just sigh it out. And it is a reflexive action that's doing exactly what you're describing. It's helping us get back into a state of parasympathetic.
Absolutely. A yawning is the same way, right? Like you can even if you don't feel tired, you can go, oh, and then everybody will want to yawn, right?
Exactly.
Right?
Then you can say you're welcome to everyone.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And right, so it doesn't have to be hard.
Yeah, got it.
It can happen just like that. So, and the more you do it, that one breath, right? If you feel anxious, if you feel overwhelmed, if you feel like, and the story that your unconscious mind may be telling you is, oh, you don't have time for this. Who doesn't have time for one breath?
Right. Exactly.
Right. Exactly. It's more the reminder. It's more that's why I put notes, like on you can get those magnetic whiteboards and stick it on your fridge door.
Okay.
And, or as I said, the card stock, and, stuff it in the corner of your bathroom mirror, or Post-its. By your computer, right? All of these ways, right? And what those do is that when you are in survival mode and you see that reminder, It will help trigger you out of survival mode.
Right. I want to see if we, in our brief time, because I want to be respectful of your time and the listeners' time. This has been a remarkable and useful, thank you so much, way of just doing something quickly. Clearly, you have spent decades designing deeper dives. So how might listeners, if they're intrigued by this and say, well, thanks for the breath, I will do that, but I think, given listening to this conversation, there's probably more for me to do. How can we direct them to you? How can we help them?
I would love to help them and guide them even more. Thank you for the suggestion.
Yeah.
I have actually my own podcast that you have been a guest on a number of times. Thank you very much. And the name of that podcast is The Success Shift.
The Success Shift podcast.
Right, with Dr. Irene. And then our website, successshift.institute.com. And then I'm going to be giving you multiple fun ways that your listeners will be able to start helping themselves as well.
Great. I know that you've got many programs that a listener might say, oh, this one is right for me. And another listener would say, well, that one is right for me. So there's something for everyone. It is not a one size fits all kind of approach that you take to your programs.
Absolutely not. Really, truly, that, we humans, what do they say? It's like the grains of sand, right? In other words, there's never two that are the same. So we humans are the same. So why treat us as one size fits all? It does not work.
Yeah. We're not the same, and yet we relate to and mirror and learn from each other. So why not do it positively? Given that we didn't have control over what might have occurred, in our formative years, we can always shift out of that and then send that shift to our pool, the ripple of our friends, family, work life, our progeny, the generations forward, because as we've discussed before, especially for women, how we are will inform the embryo and fetus and baby before that baby is even born. So no time like the moment, the present, to
absolutely
that beneficial shift for yourself and for others.
Absolutely. And you brought up a beautiful point. You are creating the environment even before you are pregnant for your future baby, and then throughout pregnancy. So that is ever more crucial for you to use these and other tools to bring you into that state of optimal healing, of creativity, because guess what? You are literally creating that beautiful baby.
Yeah.
And so if you are anxious and you're worried and feeling overwhelmed and out of control, that literally is traumatizing your baby. And so you're setting them up behind the 8 ball versus teaching them resilience right from the very start.
Yeah. And folks, this is not woo-woo. This is science. How we are as women, because we carry the eggs, imprints the egg itself within us before it even ovulates. So I can't impress upon you strongly enough that truly now is the time, and it's never too late. So for those perfectionists, and I can claim myself to sometimes be one, I'm a recovering perfectionist. It doesn't help, it doesn't serve to go back and say woulda, shoulda, coulda, if only, but instead just say, okay, now I can make that shift and that change, and it will affect past relationships that already exist and future forward.
Mm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I have a fun story about that, just showing is that when I was pregnant with my firstborn, my husband and I were performing in a community production of West Side Story.
Oh.
And so I was, practicing over and over and over again these songs because I had a couple of solos, right? That of my character that I needed to have down pat. Interestingly enough, even though that all happened while I was pregnant and we were done before my son was born, when he was upset, and colicky after he was born, all I had to do was sing that song. And within like seconds, he calmed right down.
Isn't that fascinating? Yeah. Just because
Absolutely.
the energetic, the rhythm, the tone, if you will, the vibration of that sound is something that he already knew.
Absolutely. And it was, again, that vagus nerve, right? So all of those times where I thought I was just practicing a song, I literally was stimulating my rest, digest, and heal nerve and nervous system. So that, so you could say that was the trigger for him as well. So what you do really and how you feel really does matter.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for taking all of this time. I'm so grateful that you offered us all of these tips, because I think it's one thing to consider information, but it's another thing to really act on it. So listeners, I hope that you are taking a nice deep breath, exhaling twice as long. I hope that you will listen to and share the recording and share Dr. Irene's other coursework that will be available to you in the links below. And we look forward to seeing you at the next conversation. Thank you very kindly. Well, you heard the bell. Class is dismissed. Your health journey is unique, and I'm here to support you every step of the way. To continue your progress, here are a few pieces of homework for you. 1, take the Your Fertility Quiz at yourfertilityquiz.com. Discover your personalized solutions by answering just a few simple questions. It's a great way to gain insight into your health needs and find the next steps to achieve your goals. 2, schedule a fertility assessment call. Connect with our team of experts through a brief personal call, where we will dive deeper into your health goals and provide personalized recommendations to help you achieve them. 3, enroll in the program that is right for you. Explore our range of online programs designed to be accessible, holistic, and tailored to your specific needs. With our programs rooted in traditional Chinese medicine and functional medicine, we help you find patterns that may have caused imbalances, how to correct them, and restore your health. And don't forget to stay connected with us on social media. Follow HealthYouniversity on Instagram at Dr. Susan Fox for inspiration, tips, and updates on the latest developments in wellness and holistic health.